Houston just got its first Big 12 win of the season, and TCU might have to fire the coach that brought them to a national championship. This is Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Saturday, everybody. Welcome into Locked On Big 12. I'm Drake Toll from America's #1 Big 12 podcast, Locked On Big 12. Thank you for making this show your first listen every single day. Today, we just cover TCU and Houston. If you hit subscribe, I get to keep my job. What was that? On the same day, coincidentally, the same day that Houston gets its first Big 12 football victory, TCU accepts its invite to the new Pac-12. How? And I want to address the obvious here. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm in a car as we speak. I had no idea that I would have to record a podcast tonight. It was supposed to be a TCU blowout where we all just kind of move on. We recap it on Sunday and whatever. But no, I've got buddies of mine. I'm at the UCF Florida game right now. And in the hotel room, it's like, guys, can I record a podcast in here? And they're like, no, it's got awfully late. Go do it in the car. So here I sit in the passenger seat of what looks like a Hyundai. I don't know what that logo is, because Houston just shocked TCU. Now, Houston is obviously still a work in progress under construction. I'm just going to use the props that I can find across the car. And for TCU, they couldn't really tie it together. I just don't. Willie Fritz, I knew in year 2, year 3, and you can go back to the show where I reacted to this hire, would have Houston in contention for a bowl, would have Houston as a sneaky team in the Big 12. How about year number 1? They're 2-4, 1-2 in conference play, and they still have that ugly loss to UNLV, and they're not an elite football team, of course, but this, a road win against TCU where fans didn't show up, and you should know by now, I am effectively an alumni by choice of TCU. I've worn the jerseys. I went to the national championship, and guess what? Speaking of that national championship, the same coach that was the head coach in that game might not be the head coach of the Frogs next season. Let me pause on TCU. I typically, when things like this happen, there's a scary guy walking down the street, I've got to lock the car. Houston beat TCU, so I'm in a car recording a podcast. Scary people walking around. I have to lock a car in the middle of a podcast because of what just happened in Fort Worth, Texas. I'm telling you, I want to give all of the flowers to Houston possible, because Donovan Smith had his best game of the year, 2 for 2, 13 yards. But it was Zion Chris, 15 for 18, a touchdown through the air, 97 rushing yards, including that 70-yard rush. As I'm watching this game, I'm thinking, why wasn't Willie Fritz doing this sooner? You're winning with players who weren't your own. They were Dana Holgerson's, and he's now on the staff at TCU, and he's probably not having a very good night. And across the way, TCU once again couldn't run the football. And Josh Hoover, who is a 300-yard throwing machine every time out, couldn't throw the football against a Houston defense that's just that good. Did the Houston offense play an elite football game? No. They had over 200 yards rushing, still only 150 yards passing. Zion Chris was electric, sure, but the defense of Houston wasn't just good. They were superb, if not elite, in this game. When I tell you, A.J. Halsey, after the 2 interceptions in what was effectively the first quarter, like the kid just balled out early in this game. What a talent to watch. And as good as he is, no doubt, Josh Hoover, what are you doing? Hoover looked like a kid who was a freshman quarterback, like couldn't play quarterback. Like, what? Why? 23 for 37, and the 14 he missed weren't a great 14. Where was the offensive line? And 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions and 233 yards. We need the passing game to be good, and it just wasn't good. And Jack Beck is still good at football, and J.P. Richardson's good at football. TCU has pieces. Savion Williams is good at football. We know those things. We know those things. And I just don't. I know Houston's defense is good. I know they're good. I know the offense with a new quarterback is at least competent, sure. But you went in a game where, and I gave Houston a bit of its flowers there. I can give them even more. But I have to get to TCU. My first nature, again, in these upsets is to go right at the team that got upset. And now I can't. I can't hold off on covering TCU. The team that had no points in its last 8 quarters of football, couldn't score a touchdown, couldn't kick a field goal. You let them have 30. Their defense helped electrify the offense, but you let them have 24 in the first half. You let Houston cook and then cruise in the second half. 30-19, you lost by 11 points at home. And this isn't like TCU lost to West Virginia or even Kansas or Arizona State or Cincinnati, who you might consider to be the back end of the Big 12. No, it's not even like you lost to Baylor, who's been competitive. You lost to Houston, who has been drubbed offensively. Drubbed. And you looked pitiful. There was not a point where TCU was in control of this football game. They looked pitiful. And I'm talking about the same TCU whose head coach is named Sonny Dykes, who took you to the national championship game. But in the same way that Baylor's looking at Dave Aranda and saying, hey, bud, it worked that 1 year with somebody else's guys. You've had enough time to get your scheme, your system, your players in the front door. And this is not what a football program is supposed to look like. A couple weeks ago when Dykes was thrown out against SMU and showed his butt on his way off the field, it didn't look pretty. He came back and won a football game. Then he lost to Houston at home. And Kaz Kazadi, the strength and conditioning coach, who was wrapped up in the middle of the Baylor scandal, whose name was all throughout the reports in the Baylor scandal. Kendal Briles, last name Briles, whose name was all through the reports of the Baylor scandal. Now, Art Briles takes the ultimate downfall. That's the guy who can't coach college football ever again. Kendal Briles, Kaz Kazadi, who were in the text messages, they get off free. One guy takes that burden. Deservedly so, by the way. Those two guys don't have to take any fall for what happened to Baylor. Now they do. And they should career-wise for what happened to that university, and I could go on and on about that topic, especially as a Baylor alumni. They should have faced so much more. For the text messages, for the actions afterward, for the way those guys behaved and handled themselves, especially those reports are true. If many of what was reported about Kaz Kazadi and Kendal Briles is true, and at the very base of this, they come from Baylor, scandal-ridden, one of the biggest college football scandals in America. TCU says, yeah, we'll hire those guys. Now, losing doesn't scratch the surface of what they deserve. But this, still what you get. And if you're Sonny Dykes, there was an option in the world to hire somebody as your offensive coordinator not named Briles. You could just hire a guy not named Kendal Briles, and you still hired Kendal Briles. This is where it's gotten you. You can't run the football to save your life. And when Josh Hoover is trailing in a football game and has to go find a way to win it, he can't. Hoover's great when playing ahead, yeah. But when you say, hey, Josh, could you go be elite here late? We're down a lot to SMU. We're down a lot to Houston. Go win it for us. No, not his forte. Well, maybe we could establish the run game early and get an elite. No, couldn't do that. Stunning what TCU just showed you against Houston. And stunning what, I mean, you've seen TCU do it a couple times now between Houston and SMU. Just be bad. And for the Houston Cougars, I mean, I knew they fell behind against UCF. Let's not forget that. For the Houston Cougars, this is the building block of something really cool, I think. Truly cool. Parker Ainsworth said it this week, host of Locked On Cougs. They're going to trip somebody up. You're going to see. They're going to trip somebody up. Someone is going to be embarrassed by Houston. It was TCU. And at this point, I think you have to look at Sonny Dykes and say, man, you're calling the shots. You made these decisions, and it's just not working out. We don't look like a football program. Jeremiah Donati has a tough decision coming up, especially if the rest of this season shakes out like that. You hired the Baylor guys. You can't, look at our new OC. Look at him with his family. Welcome to Fort Worth. Welcome to Cowtown. No. I mean, look, here's your result. Congrats. That's what you wished for. That's what you wished for. That's crazy, dude. This league's awesome, isn't it? TCU has no business losing a game like this. And for Houston, how gritty and awesome it is to see you show out like that. This has been and always will be. Come back tomorrow for more breakdown of this weekend. Locked On. Thanks for making it your first listen every single day. Dose Grande.